Hello, everyone.
Hello, saucers. It is us.
Welcome back.
Molly and Alyssa. Alyssa and Molly.
It's us against the world. Whoa, I just knocked my light over almost. A rough start.
I mean, it really is us against the world. It kind of feels that way.
It does feel that way.
This past week, you know what I mean? So how are you doing, Molly? And also, how are you guys doing out in the SOS world, SOS Nation? Because we are drinking.
Yeah, we are drinking. Alyssa's got me. You're ahead of me, but this is my first glass, and look how heavy I poured this guy. It's a fishbowl. It's a two-hander. But
It's worth it.
Yeah,
Please drink with us, by the way.
I've been better.
Yeah.
Just like, I mean, this episode isn't about anything like political. I know you guys are maybe, if you're still listening, that's why you're with us, because we get into that kind of shit. But also, like, we like to break it up because it can get very heavy.
I was gonna say, I was like, ooh, my 2 cents on this actually is political.
Yeah.
Because we'll say, okay, so today's episode is going to be about friendships and outgrowing them and everything that can happen going on, like everything that goes on with you internally, externally during these times, and like figuring out, like, is this friendship serving me? And if not, why? And like all of that stuff. And I feel like, I don't know, for me, it can get political.
Of course. I mean, that's a big reason that like friendships and adulthood fall through, is like, core values and like political views or religious, spiritual views are at odds. Like, you grow apart in your belief structures, obviously. So it definitely can be very political. I mean, that's like a huge reason people lose respect for another person in general. So if it's like a friendship, it's like, oh no, I can't. That's real. And I don't know, for this topic. So like, I think that we are so conditioned, and say in our society, but I think a lot of societies, a lot of cultures, where everything is kind of like put in its little box and everything is black and white, and we romanticize and like glamorize lifelong friendships, when in reality, most friendships are not going to last a lifetime, and B, that's actually a good thing. Like, we don't stay the same. And so if all of our relationships that we form early on are the only ones we ever have forever, that isn't healthy for anyone involved. Like, you will have a few, hopefully you have a few. That's a beautiful thing. But I think we are taught to, like, our concept of failure in the grand scheme, whether it's a career or a marriage or a friendship, is like, well, okay, so you had a coffee shop, but then, it shut down. Then it's considered a failed business. Like, you decided to close down for whatever reason, but you had a successful coffee shop maybe for like 5 years, 10 years, it closes down. It's a failed business. You get a divorce. It's a failed marriage. You no longer talk to that friend. It's a failed friendship. But I understand where those thought processes come from, but I think it really trickles down to like capitalism, because I'm like, why do we
Dang, Molly, you're spitting right now. Okay, girl.
Do you agree?
It's just sorry, like, I don't want to bring up your flow. Continue. I'm loving this breakdown. I really am.
Think about this, because I'm like, there's so many people, friendships, and like relationships, romantic or just people in general, that I have loved and that I no longer love or have in my life. And but that was real, and that really existed, and it added to my life, and it was like a very significant part of my life. So why do we call things like failures if they no longer exist? Because nothing exists forever.
I can't agree more. I mean, there's so many things that I didn't even consider about what you were just saying, and I'm like, that's so true. Because you don't think about it that way, because I've thought about that for myself, like. Okay, I didn't know when I was going to talk about like something recently that happened to me that has to kind of do with what you were just saying. Because I had never considered, like, I always considered like, oh, you know what? I don't have like childhood friends.
Me neither.
And I always like, there's people from my hometown that 100% do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, like, what did I do wrong? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I have long time friendships, but they're from the friendships I made when I was an adult.
Yeah.
And yeah, So it's really interesting. Over the weekend, over this week, Roe was overturned, and I kind of was doom scrolling through Instagram,
Doom
and
scrolling.
as one does. And I wanted to go through people's stories, and I never do that. I always just look at the stories of my friends.
Yeah.
But I never just kind of just go on to the next one and go on to the next one. But I was like, I want to hear what the people are saying.
I know.
I just hate scrolling. And then I get to my particular friend. We can call her Sally.
Sally.
And she is someone that I have been friends with since the second grade. And we had lost touch over the last few years.
Like close. Okay.
Yeah, we had lost touch, like social media kind of catch up with likes and comments, but nothing really substantial beyond that. But like, I'm saying from when we were 7 years old to like 25, like tight. And we were in the same like friend group as well. So it was just me and a bunch of other girls as well. But like, she was just the goofiest, like you would love her, like goofy, fun loving, smart girl. But I haven't talked to her since I really moved out to LA, and she's on the East Coast anyway. So she got married, she had a baby. And I go to her story, and it's fucking like, it's like my body reacted before my mind did. Like my heart sank.
And you threw
because
up?
I knew I wasn't reading this correct. And it was just, I don't want to bore you with the details, but it was just a pro-life post. And then another one right after it of like her sharing an Instagram post of like it was like so factually incorrect of like how pregnant, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I am like, there's no fucking way this brilliant, goofy, fun-loving girl who's not religious at all is like posting these posts, like this pro-life stuff. And I'm like, I just got
Who did
so
she marry?
sad. I know, I don't know. I just got so sad. I reached out to another mutual friend who we're not super close with, but like I'm still friends with her, super sweet. And she's like, yeah, I haven't talked to her in years either. I think this maybe has something to do with it. And I was just going to let it go. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to follow her. Maybe I was considering muting her, but I didn't. The next day, she unfollows me.
Oh my God.
And it's so, and I was like, wow, she can't, I mean, yes, I'm posting a lot of intense shit. Like like,
Yeah.
but
But shit's intense.
Right. Like, I don't understand how, it's just funny how she made that cutoff first.
Right.
She made the moves to cut off any tie to me.
Growing up, I know when we're like younger, we don't really talk about politics, but did you have similar views?
I don't remember her. I was always political. I guess I was raised that way.
Yeah.
But I don't remember her views. And if she had any, she wasn't like super vocal about them, and I didn't care. I wasn't like basing my not
it
at
wasn't
that time.
like a friendship that that was based on those conversations or issues. Yeah.
I don't remember what I don't remember. Thank you. I don't remember. But I was talking to that mutual friend, and I was like, I didn't know Sally was religious, and she was like, oh, she's not. Like, and I'm talking to a person that they were tighter than we were. Like, they were best friends. And this mutual friend, she was like, yeah, I remember when we were kids, and I would have to, sleepovers, I would get picked up by my parents early Sunday morning for church. And she was like, oh, that's weird. You go to church. Not like super judgmental, just more curious.
But it wasn't like, part of her life.
Yeah, definitely was not raised religious. Anyway, I just found it so fascinating that she was the one to cut off any tie. Yeah. And it's just so sad. I have so many pictures of us.
Yeah. Well,
and yeah.
That's one of the things like that when I was thinking about this episode too, I wrote it down at the bottom, but it was like, so it's another thing that we just draw hard lines over, like the good times that you share with a friend don't have to fade with the friendship. Like it doesn't, just because your connection fades doesn't mean that those memories do. And so there's like this thing, I like how it was worded. It said, you can continue to love your friend and experience your friendship long beyond the times of late night phone calls and regular get-togethers. People come into our lives for particular reasons, and things are likely to change. But I liked that thing of just like your memories with that person and the connection you had isn't null and void because you lose touch and because your views shift and you're no longer
Yeah.
compatible, because what you had at the time, you were compatible and you had this bond, and that is just as real. It's very real and it still exists even if your friendship still doesn't. And like separating those two, I think is important because we can like easily guilt trip. A lot of times we maintain friendships out of like obligation or habit or comfort. And I think
Yeah.
it's just like because you love that person and you have a history with this person, but they're no longer your
Mhm.
person, but you feel like, well, they are because
Yeah.
I've known them the longest and blah, blah, blah. Like I have friends who have had people as their maid of honor just because it's their oldest friend, but it's not the
Mm.
person they really wanted up there. And it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like, yeah, why do we do this? I know it's out of like not wanting to hurt people we love, but like at the end of the
Yes.
day, so I
Such a good
obviously there
point.
are like friendships that end in flames where like somebody really hurts the other person,
Hmm.
or like you have a fight that like outweighs the friendship itself, and those are like obvious why those friendships ended. But then there's ones that just like gradually
Yeah.
it just like you notice an energy shift and
Hmm.
then it kind of starts to dissolve and
Hmm.
nothing, you're like less and less inclined to reach out and
Hmm.
spend time with them, and then
Hmm.
eventually it just dissolves and nothing really happened, and you can't even articulate like nothing happened, we
Yeah.
just don't talk anymore. And those are the friendships I'm interested in talking about, because it's like
Mm.
we're taught to think that that's a bad thing because it's sad, it's grief, it's a loss of something that was, but why force something that to be what it no longer is?
Yeah. This is hard. I have a lot of, I don't, I've talked about this with my therapist. I feel like I have PTSD when it comes to the loss of a friendship.
Mm.
And I tried bringing up, and if you're an OG SOSer, you'll remember the episode about Kirsten.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
she was
yeah.
my first friend, and she was
Oof.
tragically murdered. And I always kind of look back, it was just like as like regret, right? I was just like, I had so, as a child, I had like regret. I was
Yeah.
8 years old and I didn't understand murder, kidnapping of a child. I didn't understand any of that.
Yeah.
All I knew was that like, I can't talk to her again. I can't play with her. We can't watch Anastasia together
Yeah.
again. Like I, all I knew was regret. And then when those situations would happen as I got older, where friendships would either fizzle out over a fight or just naturally, I
Hmm.
always felt like that can't happen that way. I had to
Like it
do
was
something
guilt. Oh,
to stop the the decline, essentially.
even if you weren't necessarily like gaining anything from it anymore.
I think I think maybe that's the thing. It's like I can convince myself that I
Hmm.
can. Or I don't know if it's I can convince myself or I'm just truly are maybe getting something out of it, at
Yeah.
least on my end. And maybe they're not. I don't
Right. Because
know.
there's like so many different layers to it. There's the friendships. There's the instances where like, because I was thinking too, like what what warrants a conversation and what doesn't. And I feel like maybe if you feel like you're alone in feeling not so close to them, you feel like they're still in it but you're like fading,
Yeah.
then maybe a conversation, because then so they're not like blindsided. But if you feel like you're mutually both kind of fading out, I don't then why necessarily, if nothing really happened, it's kind of weird to have the conversation. I mean, you
Yeah.
can, but it's like
Yeah.
I think we're not obligated to. But if another friend, say like you were saying, if you aren't feeling it fading but you feel them pulling away and you don't know why and you don't want it
Yeah.
to end, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how do we, I mean, obviously, the most common reasons that friendships, I think, fade in adulthood is like your lives begin to diverge in some fundamental ways, whether it's external, like moving, getting married, having kids,
Hmm.
jobs changing, or like internal stuff, like we said, political views, belief structures, spirituality, core
Yeah.
values, all these things start to diverge.
Yeah.
I've noticed, like with friends of mine, it's like once our daily lives, I don't know though, because I have really close friends whose daily lives don't resemble mine and they're still
Yeah.
close friends of mine. And then I have
Same.
friendships that I felt like fading where I'm like, I don't relate to you anymore
I
on a
don't
deeper level.
relate
And then
to
it's
you.
like, huh?
Yeah, I know. I'm singing Billie Eilish.
Oh, but yeah, I'm like, how does that Because then how do
Yeah.
you dismiss? What if you're like, well, we're just in a phase and we're going through a thing and we're not really close right now? Or if you're like, I think we're growing into different people. Like, where's the line?
I don't know. It's it's a really good question that people don't talk about enough because I
Yeah.
think it is really heartbreaking. Because
Mm-hmm.
think about it, I feel like it's just as heartbreaking, at least close to when you're in at the end of a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
in a romantic relationship, where do you see those signs where you're like, um, this isn't working, essentially, you
Yeah.
know? And it could be exactly what you said. It's like, am I getting my needs met in this
Yeah.
relationship, romantic, platonic, or otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting my needs met? And how do I get my needs met?
Yeah.
And you can get to a spot where you feel comfortable enough to bring that up, or
Mm-hmm.
you don't care anymore.
Well, in like romantic relationships, it's understood whether it's a marriage or just a boyfriend girlfriend. Like you announce to those you love and the world that you are together, and then you announce when you're not. That's like expected. Like, this is my person. We let
True.
people know this. But with friendships, you don't do that. Like, people see you together or they see that you hang out. But if your friendship ends, you don't need to tell everybody you love, like, Alyssa and I aren't really friends anymore. Like, it might come up, but you
make
but
a fucking Facebook post.
yeah,
like an
it's not like
Instagram.
when you break up with your romantic partner, or definitely like a marriage, but those are relationships that are like there's an external commitment that is like, whether it's legal or not, even if you're just dating, you have an external commitment where everyone in your lives know that you committed to each other. And then when
Yeah.
that ends, you have to acknowledge that publicly. But friendships aren't that way. And so it's like,
Yes. Oh
you
my God.
can, it's so weird. And what was I, when I was researching this, a lot of different articles, like sociology studies that have been done, consistently the number that's given is, it says most adult friendships, what does it say, the average length of a friendship is 7 years.
Hmm.
And it also says that where did it go, basically, oh, here it is. According to an article on Live Science, and there was one on BBC as well, and I linked one in the show notes. But when it comes to your close friends, you lose about half and replace them with new ones after about 7 years. And
Isn't that how long gum passes through your body?
and also the 7-year itch, that like Marilyn Monroe movie, but like that thing about romantic relationships, like after 7 years, you get a little antsy. But friendships, and then I was thinking back, and like, I don't have childhood friends, but Jordan, our astrologer on here, she's my oldest like close friend. I met her the first day of college, and it's been like 15 years. And that's my longest running like close friendship. And then we also had Des on for one of the episodes, but she's like 11 years, and she's been like 1, 2. And I think of the ones that I've started to kind of, where I've noticed them fade and how long it was. And I'm like, some of them were at about like 7 years, and it's just like, okay, it's no bad blood. It's just like, I think we're different people now. I mean, we are different people now, and we should be, but you don't always grow in the same direction.
Do you have the same kind of friendships? Like, I have literally, like, I'll consider them my best friend, but we'll talk maybe like once a month.
Yeah.
Maybe once every other month.
Yeah.
But I will still to this day be like, no, we're and they will too, be like, we're best friends.
Yes. That's how I am with Des, actually. It's like, I will go this year. I'm lucky I've seen her like 4 times, but she's on the East Coast. But it's like, I will go sometimes a couple months, or like definitely without like a face-to-face, sometimes a phone call, but we'll like text, but I'll go a long time without talking to her. And then it's just like, no, but you're my best friend. Like, it's just what it is. And then I have other friends that I see way more often, that I am closer with on a daily basis, that I don't, they're a best friend, but like, I don't know.
Yeah. I know.
And why do we feel the need to like, cause I don't really rank. I have my close friends. I know who my close friends are, but it's like, I can't rank them all. Like,
I think what's interesting, and this is more to the point that you were talking about, the difference between romantic and platonic relationships, and how with romantic, there's like an actual sort of like announcement sort of closure moment where it's like we're not aligned anymore, but there isn't really with friendships. It kind of just peters out unless there's a fight.
Yeah.
And I've had situations where both happened and they both hurt. But I know, and I talked to you about this, there was a time that there was this girl and she was like my best fucking friend all throughout college. Best friend. Everyone knew like we were just fucking like this. And it stayed that way after college for a couple years. But after that, like second year out of college, just she disappeared, just completely off the face of the earth, stopped answering texts, calls. I mean, there's another
Weird.
mutual friend in our friend group that's also close with her that she did the same thing to. She just disappeared. And I think that was in like 2015, 2014 that happened. And it wasn't until last year that she reached out and apologized and told me everything that was,
And
you know,
acknowledged it.
and acknowledged it and talk. There was so many layers to it, but like for years, it took me a while to get over that.
Yeah.
Because I had all of these, we didn't have a fight.
Right.
There
nothing
wasn't
happened.
a gradual, it wasn't a gradual, you know,
Dissolving.
dissolving. Exactly. Like where you can kind of see it coming. It was just a sudden
Wow.
ghost. And like, if you think about that, if that was a romantic relationship, that's scary as fuck.
Yeah.
But like platonic, it's still like, I don't know. Of course, it's a different love.
It's a
but
different
like,
love, but it's deep and it hurts because you're just
Yeah.
like,
what did I do?
So, and also it's this person who knows you so well that it's like, how could it not be personal?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
You know, like it's like your love and respect and consideration of me at any point didn't make you feel like you should tell me something.
Yeah. It was deeply personal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to navigate that. And I would cry. Like it was a breakup. I would cry. Like I just felt so hurt and
Yeah, like disrespected and confused.
and you
That's
don't really know how to navigate situations like that, you know?
No, and I think that like, and I don't know, that's a weird one because it's like a hard cutoff by one person, and she obviously had a reason that she later told you. And I was thinking about this, like why, in general, why we form friendships with people, I think is because we see a piece of ourselves in that person, whether it's like a big part or a little part or a part that we like want to foster or a part that already dominates our personality. Like you see something of yourself in them, or you wouldn't. At the end of the day, we're all self-centered beings. Like that's why you fall in love with someone because of how they make you feel about yourself. Like it's not unhealthy. Like that's just human nature. I think that's like, that's how we form bonds. Like you have to recognize yourself in someone.
Yeah.
So I think like, so as years go by and then we change so much, and we should change, but then as you're changing, it can happen that you no longer see yourself reflected in that friend. And I've had that happen where I'm like, okay, I love you. I have deep history with you and all these memories. But now when I see you, I don't see any piece of myself in you, which doesn't mean I can't love you. It's not like, oh, you don't resemble me, I can't love you. But on a deeper level, it's like, that's kind of what bonded us, because it makes me feel seen and understood when I see myself in you. And it makes me feel like I see and can understand you when I see myself in you. And then if I no longer see that reflected back, I feel not seen or understood. And I also feel like I can't get to you. So it's like then, then you're basically losing the benefits that you gained from that relationship, because any relationship, that's a major benefit, is seeing yourself, understanding yourself through them.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't happen anymore, it's like, I'm no longer receiving this benefit. So, and then I've had, and then like the hangouts or the phone calls, things start to become like forced or out of obligation, or like, oh yeah, we should catch up. And then we do, and it's good. But it's like, I still leave feeling like, well, I'm glad we saw each other, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's very interesting that you said that, because when I had eventually talked to that friend who had ghosted, that was basically kind of her reasons. And it wasn't like it was my fault. It was just, there was a lot of things happening in her personal life
Oh, at that
that she was
time?
keeping secret.
Oh,
And all of these secrets that she was keeping was making her feel like an outsider
and
and
that's
not
not on you because
seen.
you couldn't
No, I would have no idea
participate.
what was going on, but she was just keeping all this stuff out of shame and like all this other stuff. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
she was no longer being seen. Whether she
Yeah.
was doing that to herself or not, that was the reality. She was no longer
Oh,
being
that's
seen or
interesting.
understood. So that's exactly to your point.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Where she was just like, how do I have the value that I did in this friendship if I'm no longer being able to be completely myself?
Right.
Whether, and again, whether it's of her own doing or not,
Because it's
it,
not
it
like
had still
you,
existed.
that was her taking that option away from you. She didn't even give you the opportunity to show
Yeah.
if you would be there with her through it or not.
Nope.
So it was like you weren't given that choice. She took that away from you. But then it's like,
It's so
but
true.
still, yeah, that's what happens is like when you don't see yourself, or like I've had friends too where I'm like, have just a moment. Like I remember getting dinner with a friend and I had never felt like this or thought this way at all. And I walked into the restaurant and I saw her sitting there across the restaurant and I was like, who is that person? Like I knew it was her, but I felt like,
Mhm.
I was like, this person doesn't even resemble someone that I would think I would have in my life. I don't know how to explain that because it sounds like I'm just going based on like visuals. I obviously knew that it was her,
No,
but
it's a
like,
gut feeling. It's a
yeah,
gut
it was
feeling.
like a gut feeling. And I was like, this doesn't feel like my life, like my people. Like, the scary thing is to ask yourself with long-term relationships and friendships, if we were to meet now, would we be this close? Because
Mm.
it's like,
Oh.
a lot of times, and I know that there are a lot of really beautiful and healthy and amazing relationships, that like marriages that are high school sweethearts or best friends who have known each other since they were 6. It's not like they're all bad, but I do think it's uncommon. And I do think it's uncommon that it's fully healthy. Like we're taught to want that no matter what. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like I personally, and everyone's different, I would not want to be with someone now as a 33-year-old woman that I've known since I was 14, because what happens, even if you love each other but you are it's not conscious because you love each other, but you're subconsciously holding one another to past versions of yourself because you've known each
Mhm.
other that whole time. And yes, you've grown together and seen each other through a lot. It's not like you haven't evolved, but you haven't evolved in a way that you would have had you not been like
Mhm.
side by side. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, like I said. But I think that like long-term relationships and friendships, if they do start to feel like you're not getting anything and they're out of obligation or it's comfort, can be really stunting because it hinders the growth of both people, because you just hold each other to like if I met you in college and I was like a party animal, which I was, out of
Mhm.
control, and then like you know me as that person, and now it's like 10-15 years later, and you're still in your mind, I'm just like, well, Molly's the crazy one. But what if I've like
Mhm.
changed into this, and I was, but like I actually prefer to stay home now, and I don't
Yeah.
really. But when I'm around you, I feel like I need to fulfill that role because I'm the fun one, so I have to.
Mhm.
Like those
Mhm.
things can happen in long-term relationships if you don't
Yeah.
allow for that growth.
I think it's interesting to know what you want to give your energy to. And it's also, I feel like, important to note that I feel like people pleasers will have a lot of issues when it comes to this, and recognizing, we talked about this before, with boundaries, you know,
Yes.
because people pleasers and I think people pleasers normally don't have good boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
will make excuses to ignore those flags, ignore those gut feelings that you're talking
Yeah.
about, and ignore your own evolution, like however you've evolved throughout the years. Ignore that for the sake of, well, I
Yeah,
know
they
this person
expect
to their
me.
core. Yeah, that too. Well, it's like I know this person to their core, so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how can this be true where they're not,
Right.
serving me further? I ignore that. Like, no, that can't be true. You know what I mean?
Right.
This friendship, it's also like they hold a piece of you from your past.
Yes.
For good or for bad, they hold
Correct.
that. And you don't want to
can't
let that
separate.
go. You can't separate it because you're too afraid to let that version of you go.
And you don't even, and I think a lot of this is subconscious when it's real friendships. You really love each other. You're not trying to do this to one another. But I think then, like, they're not able to let that version of you go, or they don't, or they, they see you that way. And then, you don't allow yourself the room to view your own self differently, because their perspective of you is also locked in your mind, their perception of you. And it's like, well, I know. And you also know the role you fill for them. Like that example I used before, let's say we became friends in college, and like I was a partier, and then I know but years later things are different, but you still, what I have always provided for you in our friendship is I'll like lighten the mood, and I'll take you out and like bring you out of a funk, and those are that's the role I play. And it always came through like partying, whatever. But now, say years later, it's like even if I have stopped, like, okay, I'm not going out and getting drunk every night, but to Alyssa, I am the one that lifts her out, that lightens the mood and takes her and does this for her. And I know that I provide that for this friend of mine, so I have to keep providing it, however that is, instead of like, communicating or like maybe you don't even see it that way, but I think you do, or like there's so many things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even me, like I've held on to toxic friendships for a while because I just didn't know my boundaries.
Yeah.
There was a friend during the pandemic that I had lost, and I was just like, I'm done. I literally was just like, I'm done. I cannot have you in my life anymore. And it was one of those things that you're saying where it's like, I didn't know how to get out of my role.
Yeah. Yes.
I was too afraid to get out of that role. Whatever that role is, whether you're the lighten the mood person or not, it's scary. It's really knowing yourself. And this goes beyond, this is specific about friendships, but also I feel like family.
Yes.
This can work with family, whether immediate or extended, where you realize like, wow, this side of my family, or this person, this cousin, this brother, this sister, whatever, they are not good for you. And you can lie to yourself over and over again to be like, no, but I've known them since I was a baby.
It's my brother, or like,
yeah. You make all these excuses to not break ties.
Yeah. And then also, I don't know if you experience this. I remember experiencing it as soon as I moved out of the house, and then would come back during college, like come back for Christmas or something. And it's like, you've grown a lot, even in the first like 6 months of moving out of the house. You have all new friends. Your daily life is different. You've grown a lot. And I remember noticing myself revert back to certain ways when I came home for Christmas or for the summer. Little things, but it was like, I know that I've grown beyond these behaviors, but being back in this environment with my family that I'm close with, but with my family and in this same house. And when I come home, I become at certain parts of myself that I was when I was 14 come back. And it's like, what? And even, what is an example of those things? Like just the way that I would interact, I think, with like my mom in certain times, or my brother, or I would notice myself being more childish than I really like knew myself to be at this point in time. And I was like,
weird.
This happens especially when I was at home, and when we would go on vacations together with my family, being around family members, you do revert to certain roles, of course, but being in like our home made it even stronger for me. Like when we'd go somewhere else together, it was a little different.
Yeah. I've done that too. I think you know what it is. I think, and this is maybe the advice that we can give, is once you start to notice yourself putting on a show and performing and falling into a role that no longer feels right. And it's that gut feeling that you were talking about when you walked into that restaurant. It's that gut feeling where you're like, am I being immature? And it's having the courage to let go of that role. And if need be, let go of that relationship too.
Yeah.
Because it isn't easy, but I can't, you know what I mean? Like with that one friend that cut me off because she was no longer wanting to be in that. I mean, this works in that situation too, because she was in a role. She put herself in a role of
Right.
fun-loving, we can call her Penelope. Fun-loving Penelope. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she thought that was her role, and that, and she didn't feel
Fulfill it.
she couldn't fulfill it any longer. And had to literally disappear.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I can't hold grudges where I'm at in my life. You know what I mean? Like how, and after processing it for so many years, to have a grudge over it. And we're not really even talking right now. Like, we were talking for a while last year, and we're back at that place where we're like, I don't even know what's going on with her right now.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but it's also like, you can't force it.
You can't force it, and it only ends up hurting you if you're holding a grudge, because they're not even around you. So it's like it's bad energy just for yourself.
Yeah.
But there was an article on BBC, and it was called "Why It's Okay to Let Friendships Fade Out." And they said it's kind of what we're talking about, like seeing yourself reflected. It was like, in life, as we go through certain stages and ages, our attention shifts, and we want to be around people who are like us. The article also states, the pandemic profoundly changed the way we socialize and how we approach relationships. As we enter a new phase of life and begin to re-examine many of these relationships, experts say you definitely shouldn't go around burning bridges, but don't feel pressured to try and fit everyone back into your life. And that's the thing, like the pressure to like, ever since the pandemic, I haven't seen that person, talked to that person since 2020.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a little bit of like, we should, or I should, but it's like, you don't have to fit everyone back in your life. And in reality, there's only room for so many close people. And obviously, half of them are going to be swapped out in 7 years anyway. But it's just like, why put pressure? Because, making new friends as an adult is totally different. Like, when you're no longer in school and you don't have like a whole campus built-in network of people who also want friends who are your age. Like, when you get in the real world, it's like, where do I find, or if you move or something. But I think that like, frequenting places that are aligned with like your values and your interests, the more specific and the more niche, I think the more likely you're going to hit it off with someone on a deeper level. But even something like frequenting a coffee shop or a gym or a bookstore, or like going to certain panel discussions or exhibits that you like, things you're really interested in, anyone there you already have something core in common with. And I think the more you just like frequent things or go to things like that, if you're looking for friends as an adult, because I think that's part of the reason people hang on to old friendships that they know they've outgrown, but they're just like, I don't really know any other people. And
you know what's so wild? Like, I'll see on TikTok, like people do Tinder friends or Hinge friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like a friend version of like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. And like I see, and this is another topic, but women do this more than men. And that's another tangent, but I'll just say like, it's interesting. It's like, and like there's so many friendships that are formed from there, because you're going with the intention of finding a friend, and you meet up and you see if your core values align, interests, whatever that is. And there was like one where I saw it was like a whole ass friend group was made via like Hinge friends or whatever the fuck.
That's funny.
Yeah, but there shouldn't be judgment on that. You know what I mean? It's so, and it's easy to kind of like think that way. It's like, you have to go, like, you know what I mean? You need an app. But like people were doing that with internet dating anyway when that first came out. People were like, you have to find someone online. Well, why not find friendships online?
Like, why? And there's a stigma against like a dating app or a friendship app. But like the amount of actual friends I've met on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I have even like dated someone I met on Instagram, and like, that's an app. It's not a dating app, so it doesn't get the bad rep. But like, we're all meeting people digitally all the time on different platforms. So like, that's just what the world is kind of right now. And it's just like,
I no fucking judgment. Like,
yeah, no.
Do
and
what you gotta do.
Yeah. And also like finding people who reflect you now. It's like, I recently met, there's a new hire where I work for the brand I work for. And we hit it off. She's only been there a month, and we hit it off like right away. We've already gone out and gotten drinks together, and we just like bonded really quick, and we like get on phone calls and text and just like really hit it off. And we have a lot in common. And I'm like, if I met her 10 years ago, we might not have, but I
Mm,
have more in common with her now than I do with some of my longer friendships now, where I'm just like, I actually really want to spend time with this girl. And we're like, we match. And I love that I met her at this phase in my life. Like, we're both
yeah.
who we are now.
Yeah.
And we tell each other about our past and what happened to us in the last decade or whatever, but we met now. And it's like, that's why we're able to bond. And I think like just allowing room for that, part of allowing room for that to come into your life is allowing things to naturally fade if they do.
100%. And if
Because
there's
you can't hold on to
anything,
everything.
yeah, if there's anything that like, one thing that you can get from this episode of SOSers, saucers, that we're saying is that like change is constant and to be afraid of it is natural, but you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't stress enough, like you have to listen to that gut feeling.
Yeah.
If you're putting on a role, if you're performing at any point, you have to clock that and understand that if you continue to do that, if you continue to go down that road of performing and becoming and molding yourself to fit a narrative for somebody else, you're going to feel resentment after a while.
Yes. Yes.
And that is exactly what happened with my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to happen. And
you're going to start to feel like distanced from yourself, from who you are.
yeah, not just that person, but from yourself.
Right.
And this is what happened with my friend. She started resenting me and our other friend over things that we didn't know what was going on. It wasn't,
You're not even like,
no, but she started resenting us naturally because it's like, they don't understand me, but I'm doing it. But also herself.
exactly.
Because she's performing a role, but also she wasn't letting us know everything that was going on. But she still, at the end of the day, was becoming someone that she didn't recognize.
Yes.
And that's not fair to her.
No.
And it was easiest for her to just cut us off, for better or for worse, whether that was the right thing to do. It's just what that person had to do to
because
look at herself in the mirror with honesty.
That's the thing. And I've been not in that exact role, but I've been in positions with friendships like where I was going through something personally that was like really, really hard. And I did like things that I really wasn't proud of and was ashamed of and had a lot of guilt and shame. And I didn't tell all my friends because I didn't want to blast it to everyone. I'm just like not proud of it. So, but therefore I didn't share it with everybody. But in doing so, I robbed them. And I don't think you should blast it to your whole network, but I'm just talking about close friends. Yeah. I really only told like one friend for a really long time. And there are other close girlfriends that I wish I had let in on that because I robbed them of the opportunity to be there for me the way that I would want to be there for them if they were going through something like that. I also, you just like what you just described of like, okay, they're not able to be there for me because they have no idea what's going on. But then I also am having a harder time looking at myself in the mirror because I'm like, I'm lying to people I love, and not like lying, but just not letting them in. Lying in the sense that they have no idea what I'm going through and I'm keeping it a secret, and it feels really shitty. And it's not on them, but it's like, so just acknowledging that even though things might feel really personal or there's like you don't know what's going on or you're cut off, it likely, more than likely, if you have no idea, then it really isn't about you, even though it is, your hurt is valid, like it's hurting you, but it isn't about you. It's probably them dealing with some personal shit that they are not dealing with.
I think at the end of the day, we have to have empathy for the people that are maybe no longer serving you in your life, friendships that aren't serving you, relationships that aren't serving you, having empathy for them. But at the end of the day, you have to watch yourself, essentially. You have to
prioritize your own evolution.
And that's boundaries.
Yeah, it is.
It all goes back to setting those boundaries of like, where is my limit? Where is my cap to this performance that I'm putting on? Where is the cap to this role that I've inserted myself and made for myself so I can make this friendship sustainable?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's a quote that I love that I think applies perfectly to this and friendships. It's like I think it's like a Buddhist proverb or something, because it's such a peaceful way of looking at it. And friendships like this that just fade and it might be sad, but you're like we mentioned, it doesn't diminish the bond and the friendship and the memories that you did have. Just
Yeah.
because it doesn't exist now, it's still there. But it says, take what you need, give what you can, and forgive the rest.
Oh.
And it's like this really peaceful, like, you know, friendships are give and take. And you take what you need. If you're not getting what you need anymore, then something's wrong, and give what you can. And if you can't give anymore and you know they need something you can't give, then like you got to step away and then forgive the rest. Like it doesn't have to be
Yes.
this fight or this like, well, they did this or it's okay.
No.
Like,
Yeah, it's okay.
move on. Yeah.
People are on their journey and you have to empathize with it, understand it, and then kind of reflect back, be like, well, if they're on their own journey, why am I not focused on mine and prioritizing my own?
Ooh. Yes.
You know?
Ding, 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 ding. Alyssa with the fucking lines. With the bars.
Guys, we're just spitting tonight. So
just some wisdom over here.
But yeah, I love this conversation. I think it's one that we could have forever because it is, I mean, as we are, it's ever evolving and there's so many
ever evolving.
It's so relatable. Like everyone has their own experience with this, but
and
it's
not like
hard.
talked about.
No,
it's not something we always talk about breakups, but it always means romantic relationships.
I know platonic relationships hurt.
Platonic relationships, like we don't talk about these things it's not in the main cultural lexicon of like family dynamics and family trauma. We hear about that all the time, and and romantic relationships and breakups and divorce and all this, and like, and then you hear about friendships that end in fights. You hear about like, oh, we're not friends anymore because this happened. But you don't ever hear about the shit that just naturally fades out.
No.
Like, whatever happened to those? Yeah. Anyway, I love this conversation. And I would love people to, like, engage with us, your input on the conversation, like DM or whatever.
We'll post a story asking for stories and anonymous if you'd like. Because this, again, so relatable and it's an ever-evolving conversation that everyone can learn from. So shout out
next week and we're like, well, we just kind of, it's just me and I'm like, Alyssa and I just kind of faded out.
Guys, it is just, we're going to be calling this podcast the SO episode. Alyssa took the S with her.
You have your own called S.
That's kind of hilarious.
That is really funny, actually.
Wait, and you literally have, I don't know if you can see behind me if you're on YouTube watching us.
Yes. The SOS.
Just SO.
That's really funny.
It's kind of a vibe.
It is a vibe. When we do solo episodes, if it's like just me, it's like the SO
but then we'll be like, oh, we should do a collab. Let's just do a collab, and the SOS comes back together. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, shout out to Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Fund and all of your local abortion funds. Please look into those and volunteer, give money, whatever you can.
Yeah, and shout out to like any other country, and we should probably move there.
I know, I'm looking into it so hard. You can find us and follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, we're there, and rate and review us. It helps us reach more people. And Patreon, guys.
Yes, Patreon.
$3, $5.
Join us.
Oh, $3, $7, $11. Oh my God, I almost forgot.
I mean, choose your adventure.
Choose your adventure, seriously.
I am Molly Cottrell.
I'm Alyssa Rosano.
Here's to turning meltdowns
into magic.